When it comes to Smash Bros. Brawl, I think it's fair to say that most people either liked or really loved the Subspace Emissary. A platforming adventure mode featuring over 30 different Nintendo characters still feels like a dream, even over 10 years ago. But let me ask, could you complete this entire campaign without jumping a single time? Today, we're gonna try to beat this huge story mode without a single jump, so let's get jinky with it. To clarify, when I say jumping, I mean just jumps are banned. We'll play on a GameCube controller with tap jump turned off and the Y and X buttons disabled. That way we can still open doors and use recovery jumps, but that's about it. Starting with what I guess you'd call the prologue, we have to choose between playing as Mario or Kirby. I chose Mario simply because I'm a bit better with his moveset, and I gotta say, it feels really strange not being able to jump. I also didn't realize until now that I wasn't going to be able to do any aerial attacks unless I was launched into the air. After the Kirby fight, I took on a group of enemies, and this wasn't that bad outside of the pesky spot clouds. The only way I could reach them was with my super jump punch, but alas, it was doable. Now, PD Piranha following was actually kind of challenging. I was getting hit by every cage at first until I realized I basically need to spam Kirby's final cover to avoid his swings and hit the cages. I ended up saving Zelda because she has a bit more of a versatile recovery, which may be really useful further down the line. And next was Skyworld, and while there were a lot of jumps throughout the entirety of the level, using Pit's Power of Flight made them pretty easy. For the Sea Clouds level, I chose to use Zelda over Kirby simply because of her recovery, Farore's Wind. This made the level surprisingly easy. I even managed to nab a Greep trophy without having to damage him at all. The jungle level went pretty well outside of this dumb death I had with Diddy Kong. When I switched to Donkey Kong, I realized just how horrible his recovery was, as I wasn't even able to clear this tiny gap due to his inability to travel up when on the ground. After that death though, the rest of the level went pretty smoothly. The plane was another painless level. The jumps were really basic, and I only had one dumb death with Pit. Basically, I was going for this orange block and somehow fell down a pit and died. Get it? Pit, you get the joke, right? Yeah, it's not that funny, I know. Now, you might be wondering, what if I wanted to play this challenge with a friend? Later in this video, we're gonna do just that with Parsec, a free game streaming platform that lets us access video games anywhere on any device. With Parsec, you can stream games at 4K 60 FPS and even play local co-op and multiplayer games with your friends. The latency is so low you won't even notice it. The app has a built-in friendship and invite system, so you can easily invite friends to co-play, share controllers, and so much more. There's even Party Finder, so you can join all parties around the world and play local multiplayer games online. You can download Parsec now with the first link in the description. Thanks to them for sponsoring this video, and we'll try out some co-op later on. But moving on, things are stepping up a notch as we dive into the lake level. First was fighting Rayquaza, and he really wasn't that hard since his attacks are really predictable. But the level itself was giving me a lot of issues. I went in as Fox since his Flying Fox is decent and I'm better with him than Diddy Kong, but then I got to that room where everything goes dark and you need to blow up the bomb in the corner. For whatever reason, Fox's recovery does not blow up the bomb, and I couldn't reach it with any of his other attacks either, so I essentially soft-locked myself and had to restart the level. Retrying with Diddy Kong, his rocket barrel boost was able to blow up the bomb, but my next problem were all these platforms. Trying to climb up these small pathways without falling was a lot harder than you'd think. I was constantly missing jumps and falling to the bottom. With some trial and error, I did get through it, but then I was an idiot. I went into this red door after hitting the bomb on the right side of the screen, thinking I was going to avoid that lava room. The problem is I forgot to switch to the other door and ended up soft-locking myself again in this room. I tried for several minutes to go back through the door, but no matter what I did, I couldn't get through it and was basically just stuck there. After retrying once again and remembering how to actually beat the level, I was able to clean up house. The Bowser fight was a bit harder than usual, but after that, we were set. Next is the Ruin Zoo, and right away we start with an auto-scroller. This might not seem that bad, except that we're playing as Lucas, one of the few characters that doesn't really have a recovery move. I couldn't use PK Thunder anywhere efficiently, so I literally had to damage boost myself above the platforms, which actually means pray I was launched in the right direction, but doing this caused me to lose stocks really quickly. And after a while, I was down to my last stock and still wasn't done with the level. I kind of assumed I I wasn't going to make it. But by some freakish miracle, I actually got to the end without losing all my lives. After that was the actual level, and I played as Squirtle for obvious reasons, but died early on because I got stuck in the water. I think I could have gotten out of the water, but the problem is I don't know how to play video games. So now I was stuck with using Lucas, and my next hurdle were these 3 swinging platforms. The only way I could get across was to very carefully aim my PK Thunder shots and make sure I land on each swinging platform. This took several tries to get down, but eventually I got to the end. And you won't believe this, but I could not clear this tiny gap. Look how small it is. Like, this is honestly just so sad. I tried using PK Thunder on the ground and couldn't get any height from that, so then I tried standing on this corner and launching myself up, and I actually got right to that corner, but wasn't able to grab the ledge. So what was the solution? I had to go back to the water, drown Lucas, and have Squirtle come back in. Near the end of the stage, I was worried about getting over these super high pillars, but I somehow managed to clear them with Lucas on my first try. After that was the Battlefield Fortress. This was a pretty long section, but nothing was too challenging. The minecart section wasn't even that bad. For that last jump that's really far away, I just glided across the gap with Meta Knight. Maybe that wasn't necessary, but it was at least pretty fancy. But then came the forest. This level was an absolute nightmare. That's because both of our characters, Link and Yoshi, don't have a vertical recovery move at all. That's right, not even Link could fly vertically in the air unless he was already airborne, which we can't do. I did choose to use Link because I found a strategy where by throwing bombs at myself, I could lift Link into the air, which allowed me to use his recovery. Something strange I noticed is that Link would always get tossed towards the left when hitting myself with a bomb no matter which way I faced. I had no idea why this happened. Eventually, I died doing this and was forced to use Yoshi for a bit, which was even harder to do considering he could barely clear small gaps. The most annoying part was getting past this wall. I literally had to rely on the enemies to launch me up above to the ceiling to get across. It's cool that you can do this, but good lord. And after some more time, I got to this part with a pink switch. Hitting this spawns 3 platforms temporarily, which as you can guess, spells bad news for us. I kept trying to use Link's bombs to my advantage here, but the platforms kept disappearing before I got to the ladder. After what felt like a century, my damage was high enough to the point that I was launching myself to this middle platform, then I was able to bomb myself again and then grab the ladder. But I couldn't celebrate yet because I had one more forced fight to do, and it was especially terrifying seeing as my damage was so high and dying meant I'd have to start all over. But by some stroke of luck, I knocked out all the enemies and made it out of the forest. And now, onto the research facility. Zero Suit Samus is pretty useless here. Her recovery move is just a tether grab, and her down B only gives her a tiny jump forward. The first section, where you have to play as her, thankfully doesn't require any jumping, so the rest of the level can be completed with Pikachu. There's nothing too difficult worth mentioning. The lake shore is our next location, and we had to do a fight with Peach as well as Yoshi and Link, and then a short level after. That's about all there is to say. After that was the path to the ruins, and this was an especially tedious level. It's very long, and you basically have to play the whole thing as Squirtle to stand a chance at all. Lucas was out of the question once again, but alas, everything was going okay until I got inside the ruins. There's a part where you gotta knock out a few enemies, and you have this really big jump to make. Now, I kid you not, I tried this jump over and over and over and over again and was always right at the tippy top, but just not high enough to reach it. I was really starting to get frustrated at how close I was and was getting ready to try this with Lucas, but then this happened. I don't actually know how or why I got up that particular time, but I'll take it. After that, the rest of the level was pretty simple. The cave was next, and this was another level that wasn't that bad except for one part. There's this area where some rock walls come towards you and there's some holes to go through at different heights. Obviously, this will be pretty challenging seeing as we can't jump. I tried this with every character, and all of them either couldn't make that final ledge or they just fell into the hole because their recovery is bad. After some practice, I figured out a strategy with Pit that by very carefully timing when to use his wings and when to land, I was able to avoid the walls entirely and finish up. After that was the ruins, and this one was tough but manageable, except I found a place where you can soft lock if you're playing as Lucas. See, here's a pink switch and some platforms, and as far as I'm aware, I can't even get Lucas on a single platform, so I had to restart the level and enter it as Squirtle. But besides that, the level was possible. The Wilds was the next location, and it was short and sweet with no issues. We also fought Gallium here, and P was no trouble. After fighting Gallium a second time, we went back into the Wilds and everything was a-okay. The ending, however, was a little annoying because I couldn't get up to the top as Mario. So I took a motion sensor bomb to blow myself up so I could switch to Link. Then using the same bomb trick from before, I was able to propel myself up and finish the level. Next was the swamp, and again, there was nothing here that was too hard. At this point, I'm just getting really annoyed that I can't jump. Having to meticulously time every single move I do to ensure I don't fall is just obnoxious, especially on levels like this where you need to be more and more precise. But after that, we're back inside the research facility. Surprisingly, this level didn't take nearly as long as I thought it would. By complete accident, I took a hit from an enemy and landed on one of the top orange platforms. That platform just so happened to take me exactly to where I needed to go, and the rest of the stage was a piece of cake. Next was outside the ancient ruins, and all I can say is Olimar is totally helpless. He's another character that can't get any verticality with his recovery, so I had to slog through the whole level with Falcon. The Gamigas were extremely annoying because you had to slowly get Falcon on the edge to hit him, but most of the time he would hit you with a laser and knock you away. But once I got through them, it was a doable level. After that was the Glacial Peak, and let me tell you, I about peaked in anger trying to climb this damn mountain. The only two characters I can work with are the Ice Climbers and Meta Knight. The Ice Climbers were alright. The recovery belay is decent, but it was really easy to lose my partner, so I had to take it slow. I got near the end of the level with only one life left and only Meta Knight. The last section was quite possibly the most agitated I've been with a game in forever. All I had to do was climb up like 6 or 7 platforms, but all I could use was Meta Knight's shuttle loop and drill rush, and I also had to avoid these Spocks and Totos. Even when I killed them off, climbing the mountain just felt like luck. All the platforms were either covered in ice or were just too small. I fell at least 100 times because of how little control I had with the wind pushing me around, and I don't know, maybe I'm just bad with Meta Knight. Eventually though, I was able to get up top. Moving on, the Battleship Halberd interior was pretty simple. Being able to use Snake's Cypher really helped us out. After taking care of the interior, now it's time to finish up the exterior. And you won't believe this, but the hardest part of the stage was just walking from left to right of the ship. And I mean that. Sheik and Peach don't have the greatest recovery jumps, so trying to cross the ship was agonizing at times. Like, look at some of these jumps I had to make at the end. There were several points where I honestly wasn't sure if this would be possible. Heck, for the beginning, I purposefully died just to abuse spawn points and skip ahead. Quite frankly, I don't know how I got through this, but I did, so let's move on. Next was the Subspace Bomb Factory. This was a series of levels that were extremely long in general, but a good chunk of it wasn't that bad. The part where I had to get the blue, red, and green dotted door to open was a pain in the butt though, because you could only do it with certain characters. As an example, I hit this green switch with Olimar, but it was impossible for me to turn around and finish. The other parts of the stage were just straight up tough, but it was all doable. So we finally made it to Subspace, so I thought now was the time to play some co-op. Since I don't want to play with Nathaniel because he's bad at video games, I called up my good old friend Tetrabit Gaming and used Parsec to connect his controller to my computer. Going through the entrance to Subspace wasn't too shabby, considering we could select from a lot of different characters. Naturally, we picked ones with really good recovery jumps. But then we actually dove into Subspace. That's when we ran into a lot of trouble. As you know, all the characters were turned into trophies outside of 3, and those are Luigi, King Dedede, and Ness. Here's the problem with that. All 3 of these characters have horrible recoveries. Ness is completely worthless, Luigi's is kind of okay for going just vertical, and Dedede's is the best, but it's really laggy and just hard to use. As you'll see, me and Tetra were having a lot of struggles just trying to barely scrape by. One thing we learned is that I was basically forced to play as King Dedede and wasn't allowed to die at any point in time. We can also easily softlock ourselves in this first level, like by going into this door. And here we have access to the Falco and Pit trophies, but no way to actually go back out. So after resetting and slowly making our way up these red swinging platforms, we made it to the next room. Also, notice how much damage I have. I have to get through the rest of this level as DDD and basically not get hit at all. But this isn't even the hard part. This next room has 2 yellow platforms that, when stepped on, create more platforms for you to climb up. And it's only temporary, so imagine trying to climb up this staircase as DDD. Maybe I just don't know how to use them, but this task seemed near impossible. His recovery is just way too slow, seeing how much lag there is in between his jumps, but after dozens and dozens of tries, I did somehow clear it. But that wasn't all. After going through a couple more rooms, in front of me was a row of arrow boxes that fall when you step on them, and a yellow wall that needed to be broken. The problem is, first, Tetra died and we ran out of lives, and second, landing on these blocks after using my recovery was an instant death. I'm serious, DDD takes so long to pick himself up that he can't even save himself after landing. So what I had to do was land at the very top of these yellow blocks and with some frame-perfect positioning, do another recovery jump and snag the very edge of the platform with the door on it. This took a ton of tries. And no, we still aren't out of this level. For the final door, we have another yellow platform, but this time the white blocks are more spread out and they're smaller. I seriously attempted this section like 100 times, and it really seemed like this challenge was about to end near the end of this game.
Yes! That was sick.
I guess I somehow optimized DDD's movement there. It really did seem impossible, but hey, we did it. And yet, we still aren't quite done with Subspace. The last level forced me and Tetra to play as Kirby, which would normally be great, except that we only have his final cutter attack to work with. And then we saw there was another yellow platform, and we both died a little bit inside. Kirby's recovery takes way too long to be able to clear this gap, so the only way we could get across was to damage boost off an enemy. Like, check this out. It was the most insane luck that we didn't not only die, but we were launched in just the right direction and had enough time before the blocks disappeared. After that, we needed to fight a barrage of enemies, but this was extremely dangerous because I was already at a really high percentage with no extra lives. But after that hurdle, we managed to complete all 3 levels. At this point, we realized that we were at the Great Maze. In order to stay friends with Tetra, I told him he could stop playing so he didn't have to suffer through this last part of the game. So a big thanks to him and Parsec for helping me play through a bit of the Subspace Emissary. But anyway, the Great Maze really wasn't that interesting. Since I could use characters like Rob to get around, it was pretty easy to finish it all. And once I saved all the fighters, Taboo was our final obstacle. And after ripping him to shreds and pieces, just like that, we completed the entire adventure mode. So to answer our question, it is indeed possible to complete the Subspace Emissary without jumping. And crazy enough, it wasn't nearly as hard as I was expecting it to be. Sure, there was some nasty parts here and there, but overall it was just more annoying to play through and really not that challenging. I think anybody could do this, but I would not recommend it, trust me. And that's about all I got for you guys today. I hope you all enjoyed the video, and thank you so much for watching. Until next time.